What if everything you believed about success, happiness, even your own potential was, well, completely upside down?
Mm-hmm.
What if the key to a meaningful life wasn't about dodging suffering, but actually finding profound purpose right there in the middle of it?
That's a challenging thought to start with.
It really is. Welcome, everyone, to the Deep Dive. This is where we take a stack of incredible sources of your articles, research, notes, and we distill them down into the most potent insights. We want to give you that shortcut to being truly well-informed.
And today we're doing something pretty extraordinary, I think. We're diving deep into the work of Viktor Frankl. He was a psychiatrist, a Holocaust survivor, and his approach to finding meaning, logotherapy.
Well, it's groundbreaking.
Absolutely. And for this deep dive, we're sticking exclusively to Frankl's own words. We're drawing straight from the prefaces and core sections of his major work, Man's Search for Meaning.
Right. So that includes his own incredibly intense personal experiences in the concentration camps, but also the foundations of his therapy, his doctrine. So our mission for you, listening in, is to really unpack how this man, who lost just about everything imaginable in the most horrific circumstances, how he discovered these universal truths. Truths about human resilience, the power of choice, and the unconditional meaning of life itself.
Yeah, prepare for some real aha moments, I suspect. This stuff is powerful.
Okay, let's unpack this then. To really get logotherapy, we have to start with the man, Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and author, and someone who found himself in conditions that are, frankly, hard to even comprehend.
Yeah, he calls it being stripped to naked existence in these bestial concentration camps. His entire life's work, his whole perspective, it was forged right there.
And the personal loss was just immense. His father, mother, brother, his wife, all died in the gas ovens. Only his sister survived.
It's staggering.
So with every possession gone, every value destroyed, suffering hunger, cold, brutality, and knowing extermination could come at any hour. How on earth could he find life worth preserving? That's the central question, isn't it?
It is. And what's so compelling is how that experience gives his words this undeniable weight. He says they have a profoundly honest ring, for they rest on experiences too deep for deception.
You really feel that reading him. This is an abstract theory.
Not at all. It's wisdom born from the absolute abyss. And, later he became this prominent figure at the University of Vienna. His logotherapy clinics gained global recognition, which just underlines the practical power of what he learned.
So given everything he went through and observed, how did he translate those raw, horrific experiences into a concrete therapeutic approach? What is logotherapy at its core, and how is it really different from, say, Freud or Adler?
Right. So logotherapy, Frankl describes it as his take on modern existential analysis. He uses this image, weaving slender threads of a broken life into a firm pattern of meaning and responsibility.
That's a powerful image.
Isn't it? And he specifically contrasts it with the others. Freud, saw our drives rooted in a will to pleasure. Adler focused on the will to power, that's striving for superiority. But Frankl, he introduces something different. Neugenic neurosis.
Neugenic neurosis. Okay, what exactly is that? Is it like a different category of psychological struggle?
Pretty much, yeah. It's not about instinctual conflicts or childhood stuff in the usual sense. It's a neurosis that comes from the spiritual dimension of being human. Basically, it stems from a failure to find meaning and responsibility in your life.
So that's the core.
That's the core. Frankl centers everything on what he calls the will to meaning as the primary motivational force. It's a fundamental shift in thinking about what drives us as humans.
And it's interesting, he wasn't dismissive of Freud or Adler, was he? He seemed quite tolerant.
Very tolerant. He explicitly says he builds on their contributions, welcomes connections with other existential therapies. He saw logotherapy as meaning-centered psychotherapy. And crucially, it's less retrospective, less focused on digging up the past compared to psychoanalysis.
Right, it's about the future.
Exactly. It focuses decisively on the future, on the meanings that the patient still needs to fulfill.
And this message, this focus on meaning, it really resonated, didn't it? The success of the book was phenomenal.
Unexpectedly so, even to him. I mean, the numbers are staggering. The 73rd printing in English, 19 other languages, almost 2 million copies sold in English alone. But Frankl's take on it is what's really insightful.
What did he think?
He saw it less as his own achievement and more as an expression of the misery of our time. He figured if hundreds of thousands of people are grabbing a book about life's meaning, it's not just casual interest.
It's something deeper.
Yeah, it's a question that burns under their fingernails. It
Mhm.
suggests this widespread existential hunger, far beyond the specific context of the camps.
That's a really powerful way to look at it. And the book's structure is quite deliberate too, right?
Hmm.
Part 1, the autobiography, sets the stage for Part 2, the theory.
Precisely. Part 1 is the existential validation, as he put it, for Part 2, which is logotherapy in a nutshell. He wanted the experience to ground the theory, make it credible.
Now, one of the ideas that really jumped out at me, it challenges how we usually think about success.
Yeah.
What did he say about chasing success?
Ah, yes, that's a big one. He flat out told his students, don't aim at success. He said, the more you aim at it and make it a target, the more you're going to miss it.
So what's the alternative?
He argued that success, much like happiness, cannot be pursued, it must ensue. It happens automatically, he thought, as the unintended side effect of one's personal dedication to a cause greater than oneself, or as the byproduct of one's surrender to a person other than oneself.
That completely flips the script on how most of us operate.
Totally. And later, in a 1984 postscript called The Case for a Tragic Optimism, he dives into how we can possibly say yes to life in spite of all the tragic aspects of human existence.
Okay, let's turn now to the experience that underpins all of this, the concentration camp. You mentioned his book isn't really about the great horrors we might expect.
Right, his focus is different. He explicitly states it's not about the big headline horrors, but the multitude of small torments, the everyday grind in the small camps where most of the real extermination took place.
And he focuses on the average prisoner.
Yes, the great army of unknown and unrecorded victims. The ones without special marks, often looked down on even by the capos.
And the capos themselves. He describes them as prisoners picked for their brutality, often worse than the SS guards.
Exactly. They had privileges, but they could lose them instantly if they didn't enforce the brutality. Frankl himself was just prisoner number 119,104, mostly digging ditches, laying railway tracks. He wasn't even working as a doctor until the very end. Just another number observing.
How did he manage that? Maintaining objectivity as a psychiatrist while being a prisoner.
He talks about that challenge. How do you observe without getting completely consumed? He first thought about publishing anonymously, just using his number.
But he changed his mind.
Yeah, he realized an anonymous publication would lose half its value. He felt he had to stand by his convictions, even if it meant sharing these deeply personal, harrowing things. And those experiences form the basis of his observations, starting with what he calls the first phase of inmate reaction.
That initial phase,
Yeah.
shock,
Yeah.
and this delusion of reprieve. Can you walk us through that? Imagine that train journey.
Oh, horrendous. 1,500 people, 80 to a coach, crammed onto luggage for days. And suddenly the cry, Auschwitz! And he says, the horror was instant. Gas chambers, crematoriums, massacres.
But then, this delusion.
Yeah, on arrival, they saw some prisoners who looked well-fed, even laughing. Turned out they were a specially chosen elite squad who took valuables. But that sight created this brief, false hope. Maybe it would not be so bad.
And then the finger game.
Chilling. The SS officer casually pointing, right meant work, left meant sick, and the crematorium. Frankl states, for the great majority of our transport, about 90% it meant death, usually within hours.
Just instant, brutal sorting. And this leads to being stripped to naked existence.
Completely. All documents, possessions, gone. He tells this story. He desperately tried to hide his manuscript, his life's work. An older prisoner just yelled at him, one word. Shit.
Wow.
That was it. Frankl says that was the moment he struck out my whole former life. Then the forced undressing, shaving all body hair, the showers. He notes this strange relief when real water dripped from the sprays. It wasn't gas.
In that immediate horror, what were the first defenses?
A kind of grim sense of humor emerged. Dark laughter about their ridiculously naked lives. And also a cold, detached curiosity about what would happen next. A way to protect the mind, maybe?
Like observing yourself from a distance.
Sort of, yeah. And surprisingly, incredible physical endurance. Not catching cold despite being naked in late autumn, healthy gums with no vitamins or brushing, adapting to crowded sleeping. He concludes, a man can get used to anything, but do not ask us how.
Even the thought of suicide, running into the electric fence.
It was a constant temptation for many. Frankl made a promise to himself not to. But he makes this paradoxical point. Even the gas chambers lost their horrors for him after the first few days. They became just another almost abstract threat.
And the survival advice from veterans.
Brutal, shave daily, look fit for work. Because if you looked like a Muslim, that was their term for a sick, emaciated prisoner, you were marked for the gas chambers. Life reduces to the most basic survival cues.
That's the first phase. What characterizes the second phase?
Apathy. He calls it an emotional death, a blunting of the emotions and the feeling that one could not care anymore.
No.
Completely numb, desensitized to suffering, to death. He describes watching a boy's frostbitten toes being picked off, prisoners haggling over a dead man's shoes, even sipping his soup while a corpse stared in at him through the window. Unmoved, the mind just shuts down that part.
Horrifying. And he says it wasn't the physical pain that was worst.
No. He emphasizes the mental agony caused by the injustice, the unreasonableness of it all. He recalls a guard just casually picking up a stone and throwing it at him, treating him like a beast. That kind of thing hurt more than a physical blow.
Though insults could still provoke a reaction.
Occasionally, yes. He mentions a foreman insulting his past profession as a doctor in freezing weather and feeling this flash of indignation. Even a hardened prisoner could be roused by that.
Survival in this phase sounds like it depended on small things, connections.
Very much so. Small mercies, strategic connections. Frankl's capo, for instance, liked his story, so he'd get him a spot in the front rows for March's less painful travel, maybe avoiding bad work details.
Little advantages.
Tiny ones, like finding a few extra peas in his soup, a gift from the capo. The entire inner life just shrinks down to preserving yourself and your close friends. The constant thought, well, another day is over.
And dreams must have been agonizing.
Vivid dreams of basic needs. Bread, cakes, cigarettes, warm baths. But waking up, he calls it a terrible contrast. Food became an obsession, prisoners talking endlessly about favorite meals, swapping recipes. He saw it as a dangerous kind of psychological relief, actually.
Like dangerous.
Maybe because it highlighted the gap between fantasy and the agonizing wait for their tiny daily rations. Meanwhile, their bodies were just wasting away, devouring themselves, he says, skeletons disguised with skin and rags, and he notes the almost complete absence of sexual urge.
Even human connections seemed fragile. He mentions that incident on the train.
Yeah, passing through his home city, Vienna, other prisoners wouldn't let him look out, cynically saying he'd seen quite enough already. That loss of basic empathy, it's chilling.
But paradoxically, he says spiritual life could actually deepen in this phase.
Yes, that's one of the most profound points. Even amidst this physical and mental primitiveness, the inner life could grow richer. Sensitive people, though maybe physically weaker, often survived better because they could retreat into inner riches and spiritual freedom.
And love played a huge role for him personally.
Absolutely central. He describes marching to work, freezing, and having these intense mental conversations with his wife. He didn't even know she was still alive.
That's incredible.
He concludes, love is the ultimate and the highest goal to which man can aspire, and the salvation of man is through love and in love. He realized that this love went very far beyond the physical person. Whether she was alive or present almost ceased to matter. Love, he wrote, is as strong as death.
That image, mentally conversing with his wife, it just shows how much meaning can exist purely inside us, right? Even when everything else is gone.
Exactly. And beyond love, he noticed other ways the spirit held on.
Like appreciating beauty.
Intensely so. Seeing the Salzburg Mountains at sunset, a bird landing nearby, tiny moments of intense beauty. They even had improvised cabarets.
Cabarets. In a concentration camp.
Yeah. Prisoners singing Italian arias for extra soup, capos, reading poetry. He calls it a ghost-like contrast between the performance and the desolate reality. He remembers hearing a sad tango on a violin on his wife's birthday.
And humor, too.
Humor as a weapon, another of the soul's weapons in the fight for self-preservation. He'd train a friend to invent funny stories about what they'd do after liberation, like begging a hostess for the soup scraped from the bottom of the pot. Dark humor, but vital.
It seems like finding any sliver of beauty or laughter was like an act of defiance. He also talks about the relativity of suffering, doesn't he?
He does. That bizarre dance of joy when their train bypassed Mauthausen, known for its ovens, and went to Dachau, which didn't have one at the time. Or envying common convicts for having toothbrushes. It shows how perspective shifts, how a very trifling thing can cause the greatest of joys.
The overall aim of the camp was dehumanization.
To make people into objects, strip them of will. The constant danger was losing self-respect, becoming no more than an animal, just part of the herd to avoid blows.
Yet, against all that, Frankl insists on freedom.
The last of the human freedoms. The ability to choose one's attitude in a given set of circumstances. He stressed this wasn't a one-off thing, but a daily, even hourly decision.
He gives that example of deciding not to escape.
Right. A powerful story. Agonizing over escaping with a friend, but choosing to stay with his dying typhus patients. A choice that brought him this unexpected inward peace. He also mentions the death in Tehran story.
An analogy about fate.
Yeah, suggesting that trying to avoid your destiny can sometimes lead you right to it. He reflects on his own departure from one camp just in time before cannibalism broke out there. You just couldn't predict anything.
Okay, so that covers the shock and the apathy phases.
Yeah.
What about the third phase, liberation?
Liberation wasn't this explosion of pure joy, you might imagine. When the white flag finally went up, he says the prisoners were not mad with joy.
Really? Why not?
They felt this sense of depersonalization. Everything seemed unreal, unlikely as in a dream. Their minds couldn't quite catch up. Their bodies, though.
Their bodies reacted differently.
Oh, yeah. They started eating ravenously for hours and days, and the relief of just being able to talk freely after years of holding everything in was immense.
Frankl had a specific moment of rebirth, didn't he?
He did. He describes walking out into fields near the camp, seeing flowers, hearing larks. He knelt down and kept repeating a line from a psalm. I called to the Lord from my narrow prison, and he answered me in the freedom of space. That, for him, was the beginning of his new life.
But liberation wasn't the end of the struggle. There were new challenges.
Definitely. He talks about the bends of the soul, like a diver coming up too fast. The sudden release of pressure could be dangerous, morally and spiritually.
How so?
Some people, he observed, particularly those with more primitive natures, became oppressors themselves. They justified being ruthless because of what they'd suffered, asking, haven't enough been taken from us?
And returning home wasn't always easy either.
Often incredibly difficult. They faced bitterness, disillusionment, sometimes just a shrug of the shoulders from people back home, or platitudes like, we too have suffered. Yeah. Or the immense pain of finding nobody waiting for them, that loved ones were gone. The crushing realization, he says, is that suffering has no limits.
Yet despite all that, he talks about a crowning experience.
He does. For every survivor, he believes, a day comes when they look back and can't understand how they endured it. And the crowning experience is this wonderful feeling that after all he has suffered, there's nothing he need fear anymore except his God. A profound sense of having faced the absolute worst and survived.
Okay, let's shift gears now to logotherapy itself, the nutshell part of his book. The core idea is that meaning is the answer to the existential vacuum.
Exactly. He keeps coming back to this. The striving to find meaning, the will to meaning, is our primary drive, not just a cover for instincts, like Freud might say.
But what about survival? Pleasure. Surely those are strong drives too, especially in today's world.
Oh, he acknowledges them, absolutely. But he often sees them, especially in modern society, as secondary. Sometimes they're compensations, things we chase when we lack a deeper sense of purpose. When that will to meaning gets frustrated, that's when you get existential frustration, potentially leading to neurogenic neurosis.
That neurosis born of meaninglessness.
Right. And it needs logotherapy, something that addresses that spiritual dimension, not just traditional analysis. He even challenges the idea that a totally tension-free state is healthy.
Really? Isn't that what we usually aim for? Relaxation.
We do, but Frankl argues for new dynamics, a healthy tension. The tension between what you have achieved and what you feel you ought to accomplish, or the meaning you still need to fulfill. He says it's like architects strengthening an arch by increasing the load on it.
Interesting analogy. So a bit of striving, a bit of tension is actually good for us.
Essential, he'd argue, and this existential vacuum, this lack of meaning, he saw it as incredibly widespread, especially in the 20th century. He cites studies showing a high percentage, like 60% of American students experiencing it.
Why did he think it was so common?
He points to a twofold loss. First, we've lost many of the basic animal instincts that tell creatures what to do, so we have to choose. Second, the traditions that used to tell us what we should do are diminishing.
So we're kind of adrift.
Exactly. Left without instincts or traditions telling us what we want or what we should do, many people end up just doing what others do, conformism, or what others want them to do, totalitarianism. Or it manifests as boredom, his Sunday neurosis, that feeling of emptiness when the busy week stops.
And that can lead to bigger problems.
Definitely. Widespread depression, aggression, addiction. He cited studies suggesting 100% of alcoholics and drug addicts felt a deep sense of meaninglessness. His famous line, "People have enough to live by, but nothing to live for."
He even connected it to unemployment.
Yes, unemployment neurosis. Not just the economic hardship, but the feeling of being useless, of life lacking meaning. He found that getting unemployed people involved in meaningful volunteer work often cured their depression, even if their financial situation didn't change. It showed man does not live by welfare alone.
So finding meaning is key for mental health, even for suicide prevention.
Absolutely crucial. He believed the way to help someone suicidal was to show them that life was still expecting something from them. A child who needed them, an unfinished work, a unique contribution only they could make. Realizing your uniqueness and singleness makes throwing life away seem impossible.
It gives you a reason to hold on.
A concrete reason. He even mentioned that Boy Scout experiment aggression dissolving when they united for a common purpose, dragging a food cart. Shared meaning is powerful.
Okay, so if meaning is so vital, how do we find it? Frankl outlines 3 main ways, right?
Yes, 3 fundamental avenues. The first is pretty straightforward. By creating a work or doing a deed. Achieving something, contributing something tangible.
That makes sense. What's the second?
The second is by experiencing something or encountering someone. This could be appreciating goodness, truth, beauty like nature or art. But especially, he emphasizes, by loving another person in their unique individuality.
Love again.
For Frankl, love is the only way to truly grasp another person's core potential. It actually enables the loved one to realize who they can become. And he's clear. Sex is a mode of expression for love, not the other way around.
Okay, work and love experience. What's the third way?
This is perhaps the most profound, especially given his background. It's finding meaning by the attitude we take toward unavoidable suffering.
Attitude towards suffering.
Exactly. He says when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. It shifts the focus inward.
He tells that story about the grieving doctor, doesn't he?
A classic example. The elderly doctor deeply mourning his wife. Frankl didn't offer sympathy, he asked. What if you had died first? The doctor realized his survival meant he had spared his beloved wife this immense suffering. Suddenly, his own pain took on meaning. It became a sacrifice.
That's a powerful reframe. But is he saying suffering is meaning?
No, and that's crucial. He's careful to stress that suffering is not necessary to find meaning. Meaning is possible in spite of unavoidable suffering. To suffer needlessly is masochistic rather than heroic.
Right, don't seek it out.
Exactly. And he critiques modern society for sometimes making people feel ashamed of being unhappy, adding this extra layer of unhappiness about being unhappy to unavoidable suffering.
So life's meaning is unconditional. It's always there, potentially.
That's his core belief. It's unconditional, even encompassing unavoidable suffering and death. He relates his own experience losing that precious manuscript in Auschwitz, only later finding a random page from a Hebrew prayer book in a coat pocket. He took it as a sign, a challenge to live my thoughts instead of merely putting them on paper.
Well, finding meaning even in that loss.
Right.
He also talks about a super meaning, right? Something beyond our grasp.
Yes, acknowledging that ultimate meaning might exceed and surpass the finite intellectual capacities of man. For him, logos meaning is ultimately deeper than logic. We might not fully comprehend it, but we can still orient ourselves towards it.
And religion can play a role here, too.
It can have a powerful therapeutic effect. He mentions a rabbi who lost his whole family in the camps, but found meaning in seeing his survival as a path of purification, preparing him to rejoin them worthily in heaven, believing God preserves every tear.
What about life's transitoriness? Doesn't the fact that life ends make it meaningless?
Frankl flips that idea completely. He argues the only really transitory aspects of life are the potentialities. Once something is actualized, a deed done, a love experienced, suffering endured bravely, it's saved and delivered into the past.
Saved in the past.
Yes, rescued and preserved from transitoriness. He says having been is the surest kind of being. This doesn't make life meaningless, it makes it deeply meaningful and grounds our responsibility for how we live.
That leads to a really different view of old age.
Completely.
Mm-hmm.
He says there's no reason to pity old people. They aren't empty. Their past is full of realities, achievements, loves, brave suffering. In a way, the young should envy them for having already filled their granaries.
And this connects to the value of every person.
Absolutely. Just like life's meaning is unconditional, so is the value of every person, regardless of their current condition or usefulness. Dignity is based on those past realized values. He strongly warns against society's achievement orientation, potentially leading to justifying euthanasia for those deemed useless.
A very relevant warning today.
Indeed. He also cautioned against learned meaninglessness, where therapists or society might actually instill nihilism. Instead, he championed freedom and responsibility. We aren't fully determined by our circumstances. We always have the freedom to take a stand toward the conditions.
Like his own defiance in the camps.
Exactly. Man is ultimately self-determining. That's why he famously suggested a statue of responsibility on the West Coast to balance the Statue of Liberty. Freedom without responsibility is just chaos.
He wanted to rehumanize psychiatry.
Yes, one that sees the human being behind the disease, not just a mechanism. And his final statement, it's chilling but profound.
Remind us.
Man is that being who invented the gas chambers of Auschwitz. However, he is also that being who entered those gas chambers upright with the Lord's Prayer or the Shema Israel on his lips. Humanity holds both extremes, and the choice lies within us.
Okay, let's touch on logotherapy as a specific technique. One of the most famous is paradoxical intention. What's the problem it solves?
It tackles two common issues. First, anticipatory anxiety, where your fear actually brings about the thing you're afraid of, like fearing you'll blush makes you blush.
Happens all the time.
Right. And second, hyperintention, where trying too hard makes the desired outcome impossible, like trying too hard to experience pleasure can kill it, or trying too hard to fall asleep keeps you awake.
So how does paradoxical intention work against these?
It's brilliantly simple, really. You invite the patient to actively intend or wish for the very thing they fear.
Intend the thing you fear. Can you give an example?
Sure. A man terrified of sweating in social situations was told to deliberately try to sweat profusely, telling himself, I'll show them how much I can sweat, at least 10 quarts. Within a week, the phobia was gone.
Wow. Any others?
Yeah, a writer with severe cramp was told to intentionally try to produce the ugliest scribble possible. He found he couldn't do it. A stutterer trying to force himself to stutter for sympathy found he couldn't either. For insomnia, the advice is, don't try to sleep. Try to stay awake as long as possible. Usually sleep follows.
It sounds completely counterintuitive, but clever. How does it work psychologically?
It takes the wind out of the sails of the anxiety. By paradoxically wishing for the feared thing, you replace the fear with intent, often humorous intent. It requires a degree of self-detachment and, crucially, a sense of humor. Frankl quoted Gordon Allport, the neurotic who learns to laugh at himself may be on the way to self-management.
Laughing at your own fears.
Exactly. And this links to a broader concept Frankl called dereflection, shifting focus away from your own symptoms or problems, hyperreflection, and towards your mission or purpose in life. It's about self-transcendence.
Looking outward instead of inward.
Precisely, moving beyond yourself. And Frankl observed this capacity for transcendence even in the camps. He noted that knowing if someone was a guard or prisoner told you almost nothing about their inner character, meaning there are fundamentally two races of men, the race of the decent man and the race of the indecent man, and you find both in all groups. Kindness and baseness cut across all lines.
That defies easy categorization.
Completely. He uses the example of Dr. J, known as a mass murderer, for his role in Nazi euthanasia, yet in a Russian prison later, he became the best comrade, showing the highest moral standards. It demonstrates this incredible human capacity to rise above such conditions.
That potential for change is staggering.
It is. And Frankl didn't want followers to just parrot him. His goal was to inspire independent and inventive, innovative, and creative spirits in logotherapy. He strongly critiqued determinism. Freud thought extreme hunger blurred differences, but Frankl saw the opposite in the camps.
People became more different.
Yes, the camps unmasked them, both the swine and the saints. And he added, and today, you need no longer hesitate to use the word saints. Extreme conditions revealed character, didn't erase it.
Which brings us back to his tragic optimism.
Right. Staying optimistic despite the tragic triad, pain, guilt, and death. It's about the human potential to turn suffering into achievement, use guilt as a chance to change for the better, and see life's finiteness as a reason for responsible action now.
He mentioned some powerful examples of this attitude.
He does. The Polish cardiologist who felt true heroism wasn't just fighting in the Warsaw Ghetto, but also going your way with dignity when facing the gas chamber with no escape. And Jerry Long, the quadriplegic who said after his accident, I broke my neck, it didn't break me. That's attitudinal heroism.
Wow. Just the power of choosing your response.
That's the essence of it. So we've really journeyed through Frankl's life and thought how he found, through unimaginable suffering, this enduring human capacity for meaning. Not by avoiding pain, not by chasing happiness directly, but by taking responsibility for attitude and action.
So as you, our listener, reflect on all this, maybe think about an unavoidable suffering in your own life, or perhaps a feeling of that existential vacuum. What's one specific thing you could do or an attitude you could choose to potentially transform that situation, to see it not just as a burden, but maybe as a challenge? What might life be asking of you right now?
And maybe try on Frankl's challenging thought experiment. Live as if you were living already for the second time, and as if you had acted the first time as wrongly as you're about to act now. How might really thinking about that clarify your priorities and maybe unlock your will to meaning starting today?